Nah, Chicago, stay away! Stay away! Get your grubby paws off of my guys, man. Hell nah. Hail to the nah. Okay, what exactly is it that I'm talking about, you may be wondering. Let's head over to an article published on The Athletic by one Mark Lazarus from 5 days ago. 6 days ago. I can't do math. Is it okay for Chicago Blackhawks fans to actually root for wins? Lazarus Mailbag, Part 1. This was posted, of course, about a week ago, and it will be linked in the description if you want to go ahead and read this yourself, but because The Athletic is paid for material, we're not going to go out there and screenshot this piece. Instead, we're going on to the hockeypatrol.com article written by Tom Banks from yesterday, because what this piece does is essentially summarize the Mark Lazarus points that were made in the Athletic article, but this article that we're going to be screenshotting is not behind a paywall, so it's a little bit easier to navigate in that respect. Before we actually dive into what exactly it is Lazarus is bringing up and why we're talking about Vancouver and Toronto in the mix as well, is because this entire piece pretty much revolves around the idea of success in Chicago. The Blackhawks have been a pretty bad team the past few years. It's why they got Connor Bedard first overall in 2023. It's why they got Levshunov second overall in 2024. They've been terrible. And when it comes to the projected timeline of success that Chicago fans can expect their team to exhibit over the years, it seems like now is not the time to win. Connor Bedard may not go out there and score a 140-point season. The Blackhawks are not going to win the Stanley Cup this season. They might not even be a playoff team. Who knows? But with all this in mind, Lazarus's main idea in the article is whether or not it's actually okay for fans to want wins at this point, when you could say the most reasonable conclusion or reasonable desire for fans to have is, hey, maybe it would be in our best interests as Chicago fans to root for the team to lose. The more losses, the better, because the better the prospect they'll get in 2025, right? And they could add on to Bedard and Levshunov and build a dynasty from there. However, with this all in mind, Lazarus points out how when it comes to the Blackhawks and their on-ice product, when it comes to the Blackhawks and their in-the-pipeline product, they've got enough younger guys that are talented enough that if you wanted to start cheering for wins, you wanted to start hoping that the team makes some sort of a playoff push or whatever, that's not the most irrational thing in the world at this point. Getting a worse draft pick in 2025 does not diminish the caliber of talent that Connor Bedard or Levshunov will have, nor will it diminish the likelihood that a guy like Oliver Moore or any of the other prospects they have become meaningful NHL players. And with this all in mind, Lazarus brings up the idea of a free agent spree that the Blackhawks might be able to go down as well, which in turn would make their team even more competitive even sooner. So, let's go out there and read that article published on hockeypatrol.com, because what Tom Banks does is he takes the entire point made by Lazarus. Here it is right here. Do you expect the Chicago Blackhawks to be more aggressive in free agency, maybe even trading away important picks for players? Lazarus was asked. The fact that Davidson was ready to trade next year's unprotected top pick, which is almost certainly going to be a top 10 pick, to Columbus for the ability to draft Demidov is as clear a sign as any that the Blackhawks are ready to stop living years in the future. Could they deal away future picks for players? It's possible, but unlikely. Trades like that are rare, and it's not as if they'll be in the rental market at the trade deadline. But perhaps they look for this generation's Brian Campbell and or Marian Hossa next summer, the player who signals to both the team and its fans that it's time to start taking the Blackhawks seriously again. With Mitch Marner, Brock Boeser, Nikolai Ehlers, John Tavares, Shea Theodore, and Aaron Ekblad among the players slated for UFA status next summer, just as players such as Oliver Moore and Levshunov are ready to break into the NHL for good, things could get very interesting very quickly, wrote Lazarus in response. And so with this idea in mind, let's talk about two of the names that Lazarus proposes as potential Blackhawks targets in this article. Mitch Marner of the Toronto Maple Leafs and Brock Boeser of the Vancouver Canucks. Both of these guys are on expiring contracts, and when it comes to their futures, I think it's a lot more likely that one of them re-signs with their current team than it is the other. I think most people could understand where I'm going with this. Mitch Marner is making so much money, and he's going to be making even more money on his next deal. Can the Toronto Maple Leafs afford that, or will they be forced to trade him? Will they be forced to hold on to him because he's not willing to waive, and will they lose out on him for nothing? It's been a pretty big topic ever since the Bruins eliminated Toronto in Game 7 of the 2024 first round, but for Mitch Marner and his entire future, we had been talking about this actually as a possibility too, how if Mitch Marner were to become a free agent and Chicago were to knock on his door, there would actually be a pretty good incentive for him to want to go to Chicago. Not only will they offer him literally every single dollar that he wants and maybe even more, but they also are in a position where if Marner can head over to a team like Chicago and be the main guy stapled to Connor Bedard, that seems like a really good pairing. And when you think about how Marner has had his entire career's worth of time in the NHL so far, playing alongside of one of the best snipers on the planet in Austin Matthews, he'll be going from one of the best snipers on the planet to maybe the second best sniper on the planet. I say it very loosely like that, but I guess I should narrow it down and say, okay, guys with the best wrist shot. Maybe there are better snipers than Connor Bedard, but the way Bedard is able to use the torque on his stick and able to flex everything to go forward, put all his weight into that shot with quick toe drags and even more accurate snipes, he's like second in the world in that kind of opportunistic goal scoring to Austin Matthews. So I think Marner going from Matthews to Bedard will have a pretty seamless transition in that respect, and if they could pay him as much money as he wants, then hey, that actually works, right? But I also wanted to talk about the Vancouver guy, Brock Boeser, because when it comes to Brock, I feel like he is in a spot where whatever his next contract is going to be, let's say it's $8-point-something million, it's more than Miller, it's less than Petey, whatever it is, I feel like for Canucks fans, as long as that contract gets signed, fans are going to be happy. Like, of course, Boeser's not going to make more than Elias Pettersson, bearing a super incredible year this upcoming season, but at the end of the day, this is a guy who is in a similar age range as Mitch Marner. They were both 2015 draftees. They're both in similar spots in the lineup, top right wingers, arguably the best right wingers on their teams. And ultimately, Brock Boeser has a lot more positive fanfare than Mitch Marner. Marner, I think there's so much going on with fans that dislike the way he plays, dislikes how he disappears in the playoffs. Brock Boeser, hey, guess what? He got better in the playoffs. He'd scored some of the most clutch goals Vancouver hockey had ever seen in the playoff series against Nashville, and then against Edmonton, he still was able to produce some considerable points as well. So Brock Boeser has been nothing short of a huge revival story from last year up until this year, and Canucks fans are going to be super inclined to see him remain as a Vancouver Canuck for as many dollars as he wants for 2025 and beyond. If this guy goes to free agency and the Chicago Blackhawks of all teams snag him up, it would mean Patrick Allvin failed in this respect of keeping the Canucks core together in the ways that they all probably want to. There's no reason for Brock Boeser to even be a considerable option for the Chicago Blackhawks next summer. And as much as it would be cool to see Bedard playing with a guy that he probably cheered for when he made his rookie debut, I mean, think about this. When Brock Boeser was a rookie in 2017-18, Connor Bedard was, 13 years old? As the biggest Canucks fan in North Van? There's no way that that would not be the coolest, most incredible experience for Connor Bedard. But I'm sorry, Connor, fellow mod of our streams here on YouTube. That's not going to happen, buddy. Now, we can talk about some of the other guys too, Aaron Ekblad, Theodore, some other names that were tossed out there in the Lazarus piece, but I wanted to focus my attention mostly on these two, Marner and Boeser, because ultimately it makes for some catchy headlines, it targets some pretty outstanding fan bases in terms of their volume, so I wanted to think about this conversation and I wanted to bring it up here on YouTube. So let me know your thoughts if you're a Maple Leafs fan or a Vancouver Canucks fan. What are your opinions on the idea of either Marner or Boeser heading over to Chicago in free agency? If you are a Hawks fan, what are your thoughts on how these signings could impact your team? You already made some pretty good moves this current offseason. Teuvo Teravainen's coming back. How fantastic is that? Tyler Bertuzzi's there too. Imagine adding a Boeser or a Marner next year and really building this team around Connor Bedard. Is that a possibility? Do you see it? Do you not? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. 99 and bye.